attorney representing Nick Reiner withdrew from the case at the last possible moment, minutes before a courtroom hearing that was supposed to move one of Los Angeles' most closely watched cases forward. Something unexpected happened behind closed doors as the defense stepped away. Not because the case was resolved, not because new evidence suddenly appeared in public view, but because the attorney representing Nick Reiner withdrew from the case at the last possible moment. And while legal withdrawals happen more often than people realize, the timing, the silence, and what followed raised questions that go far beyond a single court date. This isn't just about a procedural change. It's about what happens next day and what it quietly signals in a case already surrounded by grief, complexity, and unanswered questions. The moment itself was brief, but the implications were not. On January 7, inside a Los Angeles courtroom, Nick Reiner appeared for what was expected to be his formal arraignment. According to publicly available reports, he entered the courtroom with his head shaved, wearing a standard detention jumpsuit, and waited as proceedings began. His attorney at the time, Alan Jackson, a well-known criminal defense lawyer, requested to speak with the judge privately in chambers. What happened in that conversation has not been disclosed publicly. But when Jackson returned to the courtroom, he delivered a short statement with long consequences. His legal team was withdrawing from the case. He told the court they had no choice. No further explanation was provided on the record. Within moments, the arraignment was postponed. No plea was entered, and Nick Reiner's legal representation changed entirely. Instead of a private defense attorney, the court appointed a public defender, Kimberly Green, to represent him going forward, at least for now. For many watching the case, the question wasn't what happened, it was why now. Attorney withdrawals are not unheard of. They can occur for a variety of reasons: conflicts of interest, breakdowns in attorney-client relationships, ethical constraints, or strategic disagreements. In most cases, they happen quietly and earlier in the process. Withdrawing minutes before a scheduled arraignment is rare enough to draw attention, especially in a case involving allegations this serious. And to understand why, it's necessary to look at the broader timeline. Nick Reiner, 32, has been charged in connection with the deaths of his parents, Rob Reiner, 78, and Michelle Singer Reiner, 70. According to statements released by the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, the couple were found deceased inside their family home on the afternoon of Sunday, December 14. Emergency responders arrived at approximately 3:40 p.m. local time. Both were pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities say Nick was arrested roughly 6 hours later, near the campus of the University of Southern California. Officials emphasize that the arrest was made without incident. 2 days later, during a press conference on December 16, District Attorney Nathan Hochman announced that prosecutors intended to charge Nick with 2 counts of first-degree murder, along with a special circumstance allegation involving multiple victims. Prosecutors also allege that a dangerous and deadly weapon, reportedly a knife, was used. Based on those charges, Hochman stated that the potential penalties if a conviction were to occur could include life in prison without the possibility of parole. He also noted that, under special circumstances, the death penalty could be considered, though no decision had been made at that time. Importantly, Hochman emphasized that such decisions would involve careful review, including consideration of the family's wishes. At this stage, these are allegations, not findings of guilt. And yet, the legal weight of the case is already immense. According to a timeline outlined by the District Attorney's Office, the events leading up to the deaths included a reportedly heated argument between Nick and his father the night before. That argument allegedly took place at a Christmas party hosted by Conan O'Brien. 2 sources familiar with the situation described the exchange as intense, with one source referring to it as a big fight. No recordings, transcripts, or official details of the conversation have been made public. What is known is that several hours later, Rob and Michelle Reiner were allegedly killed inside their home. There is no publicly released evidence indicating what occurred during those intervening hours. And that gap between a reported argument and a fatal outcome remains one of the most scrutinized aspects of the case. The discovery of the deaths added another layer of tragedy. According to reports, the couple's daughter, Romy Reiner, 28, found her father inside the home on Sunday afternoon. She fled the house and contacted authorities. According to reporting by the New York Times, Rami did not initially realize that her mother had also been killed until a paramedic informed her. That moment, described only in careful, non-graphic terms, underscores the emotional devastation surrounding the case, particularly for family members who were not involved in the alleged crime. Rob and Michelle Reiner were later remembered publicly not through the lens of the charges, but through their lives. They first met while Rob was directing When Harry Met Sally, a broken bar, and married in 1989. They had 3 children together, Jake, Nick, and Rami. Rob also shared a daughter, Tracy, with his first wife, the late Penny Marshall. In a joint statement released on December 17, siblings Jake and Rami addressed the public directly. They described the loss of their parents as horrific and devastating and asked for privacy, while also urging that speculation be tempered with compassion and humanity as the legal process unfolds. Their words reflected a family navigating grief while simultaneously watching a criminal case develop around someone they love. All of that context is what made January 7 stand out, because by the time Nick Reiner returned to court, the case was no longer just about allegations and was about legal strategy, resources, and direction. Alan Jackson had appeared at Nick's initial court appearance following the arrest. His withdrawal so close to arraignment suggests that something fundamental shifted, whether procedurally, ethically, or strategically. The court did not elaborate. The defense did not elaborate, and prosecutors made no public statement addressing the withdrawal itself. Instead, the arraignment was moved to February 23. Time in cases like this becomes both a tool and a pressure. It's important to clarify what an attorney withdrawal does not mean. It does not imply guilt. It does not imply innocence. And it does not, on its own, signal a change in the strength of the prosecution's case. What it does mean is that the defense structure has changed, possibly at a critical stage. Public defenders are experienced trial attorneys who handle serious felony cases every day. However, the transition from private counsel to public defense often reflects a shift in resources, strategy, or circumstances behind the scenes. In some cases, it can delay proceedings. In others, it can reshape how a defense is presented entirely. And in high-profile cases, even neutral procedural changes can carry symbolic weight, whether intended or not. Following Jackson's withdrawal, a spokesperson for the Reiner family released a brief statement. They expressed trust in the legal process and declined to comment further on matters related to the proceedings. That restraint is notable. In an era where public narratives often develop faster than court cases, silence can be a deliberate choice, one that prioritizes due process over public debate. For now, that silence remains. What comes next is quieter, but legally far more important than it appears on the surface. An arraignment is often treated as a formality, a date where charges are read and a plea is entered. But in complex homicide cases, it sets the tone for everything that follows. It determines timelines, motions, discovery schedules, and, in many ways, the strategic posture of both sides. By postponing Nick Reiner's arraignment until February 23, the court effectively paused the visible progress of the case while work continues out of public view. During this period, prosecutors finalize how they intend to proceed under special circumstance charges. Defense counsel evaluates evidence, client communication, and procedural options, and both sides prepare for what will likely be a long and emotionally difficult process. The change in representation matters here. A public defender stepping in at this stage inherits a case already shaped by early decisions, media attention, and prosecutorial framing. While public defenders are fully qualified to handle serious charges, the transition itself requires time to review discovery, assess prior strategy, and establish a working relationship with the defendant. That alone can influence how the next court appearance unfolds. And yet, none of this explains why the withdrawal happened when it did. Alan Jackson's statement that his team had no choice was brief, deliberate, and nonspecific. In legal settings, that kind of language is often used when ethical rules limit what can be said publicly. Attorneys are bound by professional obligations that sometimes require withdrawal if certain conditions arise, including conflicts, irreconcilable differences, or circumstances that would prevent effective representation. The court does not require those reasons to be explained on the public record, which leaves observers with very little concrete information and a great deal of speculation that responsible reporting avoids. What is clear is that the prosecution is proceeding under one of the most serious charging frameworks available in California law. First-degree murder with special circumstances elevates the stakes significantly. It signals an allegation of intent, planning, or qualifying factors that, if proven, carry the harshest penalties under state law. District Attorney Nathan Hochman has been careful in his public statements, emphasizing that no final decision has been made regarding capital punishment, and that family input would be considered. That caution is intentional. High-profile cases are scrutinized not only by the public, but by appellate courts years later. Every statement, every procedural step, becomes part of a permanent record. This is why prosecutors often move slowly, deliberately, and with minimal commentary. Meanwhile, the defense faces a different kind of pressure. Representing a defendant accused of killing close family members carries unique challenges: legal, psychological, and practical. It requires navigating grief, public attention, and the complexities of family dynamics that cannot be reduced to legal theory alone. Statements from Nick Reiner's siblings reflect that complexity. In their joint message, Jake and Rami Reiner did not speculate about guilt or innocence. Instead, they focused on loss, describing their pain as constant and unimaginable, and asking the public to approach the situation with compassion rather than conjecture. That request stands in contrast to how cases like this often unfold online, where fragments of information are amplified without context. But in court, context is everything. What happened at a holiday party? What occurred inside a private home hours later? What evidence exists, and what does not? What can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt? None of those questions are answered by headlines alone, and none of them are resolved by an attorney stepping aside even one moment before an arraignment. For now, Nick Reiner remains charged, not convicted. The legal process continues, reshaped but not derailed by the change in counsel. February 23 will be the next visible step. But what matters most is what happens between now and then, away from cameras, away from commentary, inside filings, interviews, and evidence review that the public will not see until much later. And when the case returns to open court, it will do so under a different structure, with a different defense voice, and with expectations recalibrated. Because sometimes, the most telling moments in a case are not the dramatic ones, but the quiet procedural shifts that signal how complicated the road ahead truly is. When a case like this transitions to a public defender, one of the first misconceptions is that it signals a downgrade in defense quality. In reality, public defenders in major jurisdictions like Los Angeles routinely handle the most serious cases on the docket, including complex homicide trials and special circumstance litigations. What changes is not competence, but structure. Public defender offices operate within systems designed for long-term litigation. Teams are assigned, investigators are brought in-house, psychological evaluations, forensic reviews, and evidentiary challenges are approached methodically rather than reactively. That process takes time, and it often results in fewer public statements, not more. This means the case may feel like it has gone quiet, even as activity increases behind the scenes. From a legal standpoint, the weeks following an arraignment delay are often used to reassess everything that came before it. Evidence that has already been disclosed is re-examined, potential motions are identified, and, critically, communication between attorney and client is reset. That reset matters. In any criminal case, trust between defendant and counsel is foundational. Without it, strategy breaks down. Courts recognize this, which is why withdrawals are permitted when representation becomes compromised, even if the reasons never become public. What legal observers will be watching for next are not dramatic revelations, but subtle indicators. Will the defense request additional time once the arraignment resumes? Will there be early motions challenging evidence, search procedures, or charging language. Will prosecutors amend or refine their filings? These moves often reveal more about the trajectory of a case than statements ever could. Another factor is the special circumstance allegation itself. Special circumstances significantly alter how both sides prepare. They raise the evidentiary burden on the prosecution and expand the scope of mitigation that the defense may later present. They also increase scrutiny at every procedural stage, because any misstep can carry long-term consequences. That's one reason why District Attorney Hochman has been careful to emphasize that decisions regarding potential penalties have not been finalized. At this stage, prosecutors are not arguing punishment. They are building a framework they believe will hold up years down the line. For the defense, that means planning not just for trial, but for every possible outcome leading up to it. And then there is the human element. Cases involving alleged violence within families carry emotional weight that cannot be separated from the legal process. Judges are aware of it, attorneys are aware of it, jurors, if the case reaches that point, will be acutely aware of it. This is why courts move cautiously, especially when public interest is high. The statements from Nick Reiner's siblings continue to hang over the proceedings. Their call for compassion does not take sides. It reframes the situation as one involving loss before anything else. That framing matters. It influences how media outlets report responsibly. It influences how prosecutors speak publicly. And it influences how defense counsel navigates a case that exists at the intersection of law, grief, and scrutiny. As February 23 approaches, expectations should remain measured. An arraignment does not resolve facts. It does not determine outcomes, and it does not answer the questions many people want answered immediately. What it does is formally set the case in motion under its current configuration. From there, the process unfolds step by step. Hearings, motions, rulings, each one building toward clarity rather than shock. In high-profile cases, patience is often mistaken for avoidance. But in the legal system, patience is usually a signal that the stakes are understood. And in this case, the stakes could not be higher. High-profile cases often develop two parallel stories. One unfolds slowly inside courtrooms, filings, and sealed discussions. The other moves quickly, shaped by headlines, speculation, and incomplete timelines. The danger comes when the second story is mistaken for the first. In the days following the attorney's withdrawal, attention naturally gravitated toward what was visible at the timing, the silence, the unanswered questions. But visibility does not equal significance. Many of the most consequential decisions in criminal cases happen without public markers at all. What matters more is consistency. So far, prosecutors have remained measured. Defense counsel has remained quiet. Family members have asked for restraint rather than attention. Those choices suggest an awareness that this case will not be resolved by early impressions. They also suggest that both sides understand the long horizon ahead. From a legal perspective, cases involving special circumstance allegations rarely move quickly. They involve extensive discovery, expert analysis, and layered review. Each procedural step is scrutinized not just for immediate impact, but for how it will be interpreted years later. That long view shapes everything. It shapes how evidence is presented. It shapes how language is used in court. And it shapes why moments like an attorney withdrawal are handled with as little public commentary as possible. Because commentary can't be undone. For Nick Reiner, the process ahead is defined less by what has already happened than by what has yet to be examined in full. Allegations must be tested, evidence must be challenged, and conclusions must be reached within the structure of the law, not the momentum of public reaction. For the surviving family members, the process is different but no less difficult. Grief does not pause for legal schedules. Loss does not wait for rulings. And public attention does not always respect the boundaries families ask for. That reality is part of why the request for compassion matters, not as a rhetorical gesture, but as a reminder that legal cases involve people long before they involve outcomes. In time, the court will address what can be proven. In time, the facts will be weighed. And in time, a clearer picture will emerge. But that clarity will come from proceedings, not assumptions. The moment Alan Jackson stepped away from the case will likely be remembered not as a turning point, but as a signal that this case had reached a phase where precision matters more than presence, and structure matters more than speed. It is also a reminder of how little the public sees in real time. The legal system is not built for immediacy, it is built for durability. And when the next court date arrives, the focus will not be on what changed in January but on what can be established moving forward. What ultimately defines this case will not be a single court appearance, or a last-minute change in legal representation. It will be the process. A process that unfolds slowly, deliberately, and often out of public view. A process designed not to satisfy curiosity, but to test facts, examine evidence, and reach conclusions that can withstand time. For now, what's known as limited allegations have been filed, a defense structure has shifted, and a family is navigating loss while the legal system moves forward step by step. What remains unknown is far more significant: how the evidence will be interpreted, what arguments will be raised, and how the court will ultimately assess responsibility. Those answers won't come from speculation or early narratives. They will come from proceedings that demand patience and restraint. As this case continues, the focus will remain on verified information, documented filings, and outcomes reached through due process, not assumption. And when the next chapter begins in court, it won't just add details, it will start to clarify the broader picture that has so far remained out of reach. That next step may not bring resolution, but it will bring understanding. And understanding, in cases like this, is what truly matters. If you want to follow how the legal process unfolds from here, what happens after arraignment, how special circumstance cases develop, and why some trials take years rather than months, that's where the next video begins.